Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, have you ever been faced with the challenge of sourcing, installing, and programming a used control module in a vehicle? I know a lot of us have. It seems to be happening more and more often today with the volume of control modules on vehicles, the cost of some new ones, or even the availability of new control modules. In some cases, used may be the only option. So what do you do here? I strongly recommend checking out SJ Auto Solutions and Tommy Oliva. Tommy offers a cloning service for used control modules to make these things plug and play for the vehicle that you're working on. In a lot of cases, he is also able to source the control modules if you're unable to locate one for the vehicle that you're working on. But once you get connected with Tommy, he's going to offer fantastic support from start to finish to make sure that that control module is going to work in your application. He's also got tech support that he offers through his website, along with some free resources there as well on information about used control module programming. So make sure to check out SJ Auto Solutions. I can't recommend that enough. I am happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it, and that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. What's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and I'll be your host once again for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Today on the show, I've got a guest. His name is Maxwel Anyanwu. He is a mobile technician and instructor out of Idaho, and we've developed a friendship over the last couple of years, interacting through Facebook and helping each other out with diagnostics and modules and things like that. But Maxwel is originally from India, and he's going to share on the show today his story about coming to America, going to school for automotive, working in several different shops and for Ford for a while, and then eventually transitioning to doing mobile work, which is what he's doing now, diagnostics, programming, keys, and he's been doing a lot of board level module repair as well. So really cool stuff and a great guy. So I enjoyed this talk quite a bit. Hopefully you will as well. Hey, before we jump into the episode, I do want to let everyone know I've gotten a lot of requests for shirts and or sweatshirts for the show, for the podcast, right? So I actually have that set up now that we can get these made. If you want to check out the mock-up, go to the Facebook page. You'll see that in the show notes, and you can get a hold of us and get them ordered, and we'll get them shipped out to you. Prices and sizes and colors and all that stuff's on there, but go check that out. And yeah, that's it. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the episode. All right. Good evening, Maxwel. How's it going? Or do you go by Maxwel or Max? I guess I never asked.
It's either one works for me. People from India mostly call me Max, but either one works.
Okay. And then how do I pronounce your last name? I don't think I've ever heard you say it out loud.
It's Anyanwu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I get that right. I'll do a little introduction ahead of time where I say your name, but I always like to get the pronunciation as close to correct as possible. So cool. So you're originally from India?
So I was born and raised in India. My parents were from Nigeria, so they met in India, and yeah, me and my siblings were born there and
Okay.
grew up in India. Yeah, till I came to America.
How old were you when you came over here?
About 24. It's
Okay.
about 9 years. Yeah, it's been 9 years.
Oh wow. What was the driving factor? How did that shape up to come from across the world to America?
So I I mean, even as a teenager, I guess I wanted to come to America to for studies. Um, what made it? I was thinking at some point, because I actually was, so I did a voluntary service for my church as a missionary for 2 years, and then after that, I was thinking, I was like, should I go to college here in India? Should I go elsewhere? And my mom wanted me to come here. Her friend also wanted me to come here, and I was just thinking about it. And I guess fights between my mom and my dad grew a lot, and I didn't want that environment. Um, I wanted to get out, and I guess that was a way out for me. So yeah, when people think it wasn't just about the education, but it was about the whole environment that I wanted to get out of, because
Okay.
it was abusive, and so I wanted out, and so
Oh, okay.
I was able to come here.
Now, I don't know much about India, but from the stuff that I've read, like population is a big issue there. Did you experience that where you were at?
Yeah, living in Idaho and obviously coming from India, it's a huge. I guess that's the culture shock because it's crowded. Like um, where I live in, like we call it's I'm near Idaho Falls. I'm in Rexburg, so
Okay.
if I were to compare that to India, a city in India, it would be about like 10 million people living in that area, combining maybe Rexburg and Idaho Falls.
Wow.
And so it was a lot. And we're talking like 11 years ago, and now it's probably more because I hear they're about to surpass China in a
That's
little bit.
wild.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at like the physical size of the country, that there's
Yeah.
that many people crammed in there. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And it
What?
used to be it used to be Pakistan, and before the partition, I can't imagine how many people were there, but after the partition, it's still big enough, and it's India has been divided several times, and it's still big.
Yeah. What did you do for work when you lived there?
When I was there, it was complete like it was. I never worked. As a foreigner, you can't really work in India. You can only study. So I was more
Oh,
so focused on my studies. My dad had like supplemental income. He and my mom both, they were students too, so they were doing their PhDs and masters, and they had like supplemental income coming from Nigeria. Um,
okay.
but yeah, you couldn't, as a foreigner, you can't. It's not like here where you can have a work visa or something like that. I guess if you're there for work, you have to have a work visa. But I was on a student visa, and even though I was born there, they never considered me a citizen. I was just because in order to be a citizen, either one of my parents has to be Indian, and so it
Oh,
was, yeah, I've always been kind of the outsider because I never belonged. When I went back to Nigeria for 2 years too, I felt like an outsider because people didn't understand the way I say things because I had that Indian accent.
Okay.
And I think coming here to America, I think I feel more welcome because obviously there's a reason it's called a melting pot.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a little bit of everything here.
Yeah.
Um, do you have your citizenship for the US now?
I'm still a permanent resident. I'm working towards that, hopefully next year.
Okay. Yeah, I know a couple people. I used to work with a guy from Mexico that he went through the process, and it was a process. Like,
Yeah.
this wasn't just something where you just go to the DMV and sign some paperwork. Like, it was years long of doing things and waiting and jumping through hoops and stuff. But that, I mean, that's good that there is a route that they have for you to get there. I didn't know
Yeah.
that about India, that you couldn't become a citizen there unless you had parents that were from there. That's interesting. But
Yeah.
what were you studying when you were there? What were you going to school for?
So I started out with mechanical engineering. I was doing mechanical engineering even when I came over here. It was mechanical engineering, and then um, yeah, I like wasn't I wasn't passing my classes. It was kicking me around, and I heard like some professors were like, you probably should, you know, change your major or something. And I had a friend who was in the automotive program here at BYU, and he was like, you'll be good in this major, and I'm like, yeah, but it's too expensive for me. And this was 2 years before I even thought about like changing my major. And so I switched. Eventually, like, I took a break from school because I wasn't doing well. So I had to decide whether I was going to drop out or, pursue something else. And yeah, automotive made sense. I talked to the instructors here, and yeah, they were like, yeah, they convinced me, and I was like, yeah, I want to try it before I, completely give up on education. And so
Hmm.
I ended up getting my 4-year degree in automotive.
Oh, okay. Did they actually have a 4-year program for the automotive, or how long was that section?
Yeah, it was a 4-year program.
Oh,
So
interesting.
by the time I was done with mechanical engineering, I had already taken some generals. So now I was focused more on the core of automotive. But yeah, they do have like four programs. One of the four programs is a 2-year program. The three are 4-year programs.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. So I taught at the local community college here for the auto program, and yeah, 2 years was the max, and we were trying to expand, build upon that because, as you know, there's just so much to learn or to know
Yeah,
about cars, and to do it in 2 years is actually kind of tough. But that's where we were capped out at as far as time for what they would allow, because there wasn't a degree that you could get in automotive unless
yeah,
it's on the engineering side of things, but that's not what we taught. There's the diploma, and there's only so many credits that you can do in that whole thing. But that's cool that they had a longer program. So did you? And then, okay, so you did the tech school, and then did you go right into a shop from there, or where did you take it from there?
so right after that, I had a 9-month stint with Ford Motor Company. So I worked there as a technical support analyst. So that's kind of like the same route. I mean, a step below a field service engineer, I would
Okay.
say. I mean, I've listened to your show, and you've had like a couple of field service engineers on the show. So if I
Hmm.
if I had pursued that route, I would be like, looking into that being a field service engineer. But I was a technical support analyst for 9 months, and things didn't work out there. This was right around COVID,
Okay.
and yeah, they had to let me go because obviously I was, not making the progress that was needed. And yeah, I mean, it was kind of a downturn, but I mean, looking back, I I mean, if it had to happen, it makes sense now that it had to happen that way, and um, because a lot of the things I delve into, I got to know about like the other side of automotive, like programming and all that, came from that aspect of working with them. Because I worked in the sync commodity, so like
Mm,
yeah, I was in the sync commodity.
like the infotainment and
Yes, yes.
APIMs and stuff like that.
APIMs and the FCIMs or
Sure.
FDIMs, yeah.
I actually just did one the other day for the first time in a while because, as I'm sure you know, the the programming for those is a little different than your average module. There's a little bit more to it, and
Yeah.
some of the ones that I had done in the past took me a long time. Like it's you're there for a couple hours at least to get this all done, and so of course
Yeah.
I got to charge for that. And the dealers around here do them for pretty cheap in comparison. And so I was telling people, I'm like, hey, to be honest, like I don't want to sit there for 2-3 hours programming an APIM. That doesn't sound like fun to me. So the dealer do it cheaper. But this one guy, he was just adamant. He's like, I don't want to bring it to the dealer. I'll pay you whatever. Just come do it. Okay. And I hadn't done one in probably a year and a half, 2 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so now they had switched it to where it's all through FDRS, regardless of the year. Like it can be an IDS car, but you still go through FDRS to do it now. And it went way easier than the last time I remember. I mean, you still do the flash drive thing, and it's not the quickest module, but honestly, now I have a VCM3, so I don't know if that plays a role as to maybe speeding things up. I don't know, but man, I was like, oh, these aren't too bad now. And I mean, still you charge more than an average programming, but I'm like, okay, I was in and out of here in a reasonable amount of time, so I might start trying to scoop those modules up again.
Yeah. Those ones were like even being in training, the way they talked about it and how you do those resets, because everything was about like because the APIM is like basically the Bluetooth module, and so whenever there's issues with that, they're like, "Oh, could it be the customer's phone? Could it be, you know?" And we check
Sure.
everything, and so it always came back to either the customer's phone or the module itself.
Okay. Yeah, that sort of stuff's so hard to test too, right? Like,
Yeah,
how do you test an intermittent Bluetooth connection without replacing things? Like, there's no
exactly.
uh, guys have enough trouble with just regular electrical testing, and then you try to throw something like that on top of it, and it's just ridiculous. I've had a few things like that, and it's like, hey, it works right now. I really can't tell you much. Check for updates, right? That there are updates for stuff like that, and maybe they'll fix it. Maybe it won't. Try a different device.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, the cool thing about being at a dealership is you can one of the recommendations like I heard like even in training that they'll tell us to tell the technician at the dealer would be to swap a known good because obviously they have the if they have the same car, just swap a known good because those APIMs if you swap them or if you swap the I think it was more so the display module, the touch screens,
sure.
because you swap the touch screens because it's just connected to the APIM,
Yeah,
and you swap them, and if it works it works, if it doesn't work then something is going on.
yeah. I've run into that scenario. I had a newer Ford. I don't remember what size truck, but it was a truck, and the screen was blank. And it's that setup where the screen is sandwiched onto the front of the APIM, and
Yeah,
technically it's two different modules, but the connection between the two is not normal wiring. It's this
yeah,
little tiny 4-pin connector, and there's no diagram for what's what, but
yep,
okay, one's got to be a power, one's got to be a ground, right? And
yep.
I was trying to make the determination to the shop, you need a screen, which what's I always get these two confused. The FCIM and FDCIM, is that the two different
F
modules?
Yeah, the FDIM and FCDIM.
Right.
So
Which one's the controls?
the controls is the FCDIM, the one it's on the CAN network basically.
Yeah, and then the screen, that's the
The
just the
FDIM.
FD. Okay, okay. See,
Yeah.
I can never remember those two. I know there's two, and but anyways, like on this one, you couldn't, even with it functionally, you couldn't talk to this screen on the network, even though technically it's kind of a module, and there's not a whole lot of testing when you get to that point.
Yeah.
And we ended up putting an APIM in it. That was my determination that I made. I was like, it doesn't seem. I actually went into the little pins between the two connectors, and I'm like, there's no power or ground here. Let's put an APIM in, and it did fix it. But yeah, those are interesting.
Mhm.
Um, you can do quite a bit with those APIMs too with Forescan. Um, you can like change a lot of the settings. I've turned on um, navigation on some older vehicles that didn't have it.
Oh.
Um, and you have to get some additional stuff so that it actually has the information.
Oh,
But
okay.
then you can change like the splash screen and stuff like that. It's kind of cool.
And I never knew that. I
Well,
I
that was
I
actually. Oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, sorry.
That was the reason I got Forescan, was because somebody was like, "Hey, I have this Ford Fusion." It was a tech at a shop, and he's like, I saw this YouTube video where this guy, you know, basically activated navigation, and it is just a setting. Now you have to have the memory card, and then it has like data,
Yeah.
and this is an older Fusion, but that was the whole reason I bought Forescan, is because you actually went in there and you changed the, the as built coding, and then
Yeah.
it turns it on, and then you put the memory card in, and it worked, and yeah, so that was my first experience. That was quite a few years ago, though.
So that the old that fusion, was it a sync 1 or sync 2?
Ooh, I don't know. I want to say it was a two, but
It was a
that
2,
was
okay.
like 2018, so it's been a while. And it was
Oh.
older. I'm trying to think of what year this was. Yeah, it was a long time ago. There's no way I'm going to remember that. But it was one of the earlier versions of Sync, yeah. So you went from Ford dealership, and then where'd you take it from there?
So after they let me go at 4, because all this is happening right around the time of COVID, so I never got the chance to go all the way to Michigan. I was in Missouri with my in-laws, and like my wife and and me were in Missouri because it was remote. The position was remote because when I was going into it, it wasn't remote. It was, we were told that at some point we were going to go to Michigan, but
Okay.
that didn't work out. So I stayed in Missouri till the day they let me go, and then my wife got hired teaching special needs elementary here in Idaho. Because she, prior to leaving Idaho, she was doing preschool, special needs preschool here. So she got a special needs elementary job, and we came back, and then I worked for a shop here in town. It was a shop slash used car dealer, and yeah, that's when I think I was there for like 8 months, and then I was like, at some point, I wanted to do my own thing, and so yeah, I decided to kind of go mobile at that point. And I mean, your podcast was the because I knew people were doing this, but I never knew to what extent. But then once I listened to your podcast, I'm like, oh, this is a thing. It's like a
This
mobile
dummy is
fit.
doing it. I know I can.
No, but it was your. I mean, I don't know whether I've told you this before, but your podcast, like at that point when I left Ford, like my confidence was at an all-time low. I was just like, I was almost out of the industry. I was like, I don't want to do anything with cars. Because basically I felt stupid. I felt like I didn't know anything, Like who stays in a training for that long? And so at that point I was listening to your podcast, and I was doing this paper route, and every time I would play your podcast, And those early ones with the speed density and the mass airflow sensor, I'm like, well, that makes so much sense. And that got my love for diagnostics back. And I was like, maybe I want to do this. And I talked to a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people, and a lot of people were like, you should probably get more experience. Which, yeah, they're not wrong, but I mean, any experience is better than no experience. And so I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, that's why I worked at that shop for 8 months, and then I'm like, I think I want to do this on my own. And yeah, it was really hard at first, and yeah.
So now you're out there doing the mobile programming, diagnostics, all that stuff.
Yeah, mobile programming, diagnostics. I even started cutting keys now.
Oh,
And so,
nice.
yeah,
What machines did you get?
I got the Triton Plus.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just got the Triton.
The only thing I don't like about it is that it's unlike the other, what's the other one?
The Dolphin or
Yeah,
the
the
X Source one.
Dolphin. Yeah, the Exhaust one that basically, it has its own battery. It runs
Yeah.
yeah. This one you have
I,
to like power it all the time.
yeah, it motivated me to put an inverter in my van because I had been dragging my feet on that. And it's nice. I like having the inverter in my van for sure. That is nice to just be able to plug anything in and charge a laptop or whatever. But I did, yeah, kind of miss the battery function because with the Dolphin, I would just grab that thing. Like if it was cold outside, I mean, I don't have room to go inside of my van to cut keys, so I would just grab it and bring it inside with me next to the car in the shop and just cut the key right there. Um, but yeah, yeah, obviously, I mean, I guess I could do that with the one. I just got to bring the cable and plug it in somewhere. But yeah, I bought the Triton on the recommendation from Isaac. I was talking to him about like, hey, I'm going to buy a new key machine because I'm going to put the Dolphin in my employee's van. What would you recommend? Because the Dolphin I had was a few years old. Um, and it's like one of those things. It's like what you're used to. You miss that because you know it. And then you're using a new tool and you're like, oh, I don't like this. And it's not that it's bad. It's just, it's different and it's a learning curve. And but it cuts the keys good. I've had really good luck with it, and it actually has a shield over the front of it so that my van's not completely full of metal shavings all around it. That was the one bad thing about the Dolphin is there's no guard, so these little metal shavings are just going everywhere inside the van. Yeah, how's the key thing going for you? You've been doing a lot
It's
of them, or still just getting into it?
I'm slowly getting into it. It's been about a month. And I've had a lot a lot of requests, especially the Euro stuff. And that's a big learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do a I think it was an O2 Z3, BMW Z3.
Okay.
That's the one that you have to take the EWS out of the car and read it to enable the key.
Yep.
And I had to pass on that job, and later on I found out about AK-90, and I'm like, wow, I wish I had that tool.
Yeah, what's it like $70 or something like that
Yeah,
for it?
yeah.
Yeah. And that's
It's
the tool. I don't know of a better one. It's not like there's a more expensive option that works better. Like that's the tool for those EWS BMWs.
Yeah, it's on back order right now because the one I ordered, they told me that it's on back order, and when it's out of back order, they'll ship it to me. But like, yeah, I'm
Okay.
still waiting for mine.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you need it, I can mail it out to you if you just got to finish a job or something. I don't use it very often because I don't get the calls on those old ones all the
Yeah,
time, but every once in a while, and when I need it, it sure works good. Um, Yeah, I haven't done a ton of Euro keys lately. It's like I'll have a big wave of them, like it's
yeah,
Volkswagen, BMW, Audi, blah blah blah, and then lately it's all been domestic stuff, ton of domestic stuff, and for the most part, all that's pretty straightforward, right? Like
yeah,
Ford, GM, Chrysler, outside of some oddball stuff, that's all scan tool. Just gotta wait, or there are ways around it. I found like with the GMs, I didn't know at first you could just do key in, out, key in, it's programmed. Like remote and
Wow.
everything. Like that's
S-
almost any Blade GM with a transponder, almost, not all of them, but and the Chryslers, I found out, if you have two functional keys, same thing. Ford, if you have two functional keys, that third one, like you don't have to wait the 10 minutes. You just go key in, out, third key in, boom, you're done. It's
Wow.
programmed. So it's like little stuff like that. But I will say this. It's bad on me for not knowing that stuff. It's in the service information. It tells you if you just read it for key programming. That's where I picked up those tricks. But I don't know how many hours and hours I wasted doing the 10-minute learn for these keys when I had a functional, especially for a GM, right? Like unless I'm doing an
Yeah.
all keys lost, okay, well then you gotta wait. But if I have a functional key, it's literally, I'm done. Right? That's about as gravy as it gets, is those things.
Yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah,
That's
right.
good to
And
know.
then when I learned, I'm like, how did I not know this? But again, yeah, just gotta read, I guess.
Yeah.
And you've been doing a lot of module stuff too. I've seen you on the pages and stuff, and getting in there, getting
Yeah.
getting your hands dirty in those modules.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot more modules. I think the last one I did was a GM cluster that they got a used one, and so I obviously had to match up the mileage to the car. So that was pretty tricky because that was the EEPROM was right underneath or right very near to the Prindle, and so
Oh,
getting the EEPROM out that was the only option because I have an in-circuit reader like the AR32A, and but that clip won't go on there because the Prindle is right in the way,
oh,
so had to take the
gotcha.
chip out.
But you made it work.
Yeah, we made it work. I mean, at first it was reading 0 miles, and I was nervous. I'm like, what did I do wrong? And it's just the EEPROM. The EEPROM wasn't sitting right, so I just
Okay.
had to make it sit right. And yeah, I'd read the miles, and they were happy. It was actually for the school. I did it for the school. I also teach there part time too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
At the tech school that you went to?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
What courses are you teaching there?
So I'm doing the electricals, the basic electrical class and vehicle electronics, which is the a little bit advanced electrical class. And then they have me doing a lecture for auto ownership and maintenance. So that's for
Oh,
people like I have people from all other majors that don't know anything about cars, or they want to learn about cars, they want to know about how to maintain their cars better, so I teach that class.
oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You doing that at night, or when are you doing those
I
courses?
I do. So today I had a class, so I usually do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Um and then the lecture is from 11:30 to 12:30, and then the lab, because I teach the lab, the electrical courses, it's just the lab portion that I'm teaching. So those labs are from 2 to 4:15,
Okay.
and it's like it's kind of like a block class. It's not, those electrical labs are not the whole, it's not whole semester, so they go for 6 weeks, and then I switch to teaching the other lab, and so it's all condensed, and yeah.
Okay. And then you got a full shop there, hoists and
Yeah.
vehicles and all that stuff too.
Yeah, we have a full shop. We work on customer vehicles, like people actually sign stuff through the school, and they bring in their cars and we work on them.
Nice. Yeah, that's getting them that real life experience in a controlled environment. I always thought was so good, and we had this a similar type of thing, and COVID kind of screwed with taking in outside
Yeah.
work, unfortunately. But before that, when I was there, it was awesome because yeah, all the faculty and staff would bring their cars, and then as long as it fit the program or the subject we were covering, like
Yeah.
we'd make it work. And it was, I always found it was better. So let's say we're getting a vehicle in where it has a problem and I want the students to figure out what it is. It was so much better if I didn't know what the problem was, right? If I had set it up, or maybe it's a school car that has a bug, a problem we know about, I would I would find myself, even though I was trying not to, I'd find myself kind of nudging them in the right direction, right? Like, no, you probably shouldn't check that, right? That sort of stuff. Whereas I'm obviously there to help them, but also part of teaching is letting them figure it out. And if I don't know the problem, I found it went a lot better because I make some suggestions, but I don't know if they're going the right direction or not. They might be going chasing their tails on something, but that's part of the process, right? So anyway, I tried to get in as much live work as I could for that reason. That was really beneficial for them to actually do that work. Classroom's important too, but then getting out in the shop, getting their hands on the stuff, like talking about something like a CAN bus or module communication or whatever. It's one thing in a classroom, man. It's a totally different thing to get them out on the car doing it, and sometimes you see the light bulbs come on at that point because they're like, oh, this is what you meant. I completely misunderstood, or I didn't conceptualize this, or saw it on a diagram, and yeah, that little line made sense for a wire, but it didn't make sense in the car, you know.
That's exactly. I mean, even I knew about Ohm's law like when I was doing mechanical engineering because of my physics classes. But once I switched to automotive, where you can actually put that concept into practice, that's like the light bulb started going off. And I
Yeah.
imagine like just seeing the light bulbs on these students' faces, like that makes me like I'm like, oh yeah, they're getting it. They're getting it.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've dove into or tried to dive into like the actual physics of electricity a number of times, looking at electron flow and all this stuff, like what's actually happening. Because I want to know. I'm curious, and it's interesting. But you think about it, like if you had just learned that side of it, like how it actually works, and you were really proficient on it, and then somebody threw a broken car in front of you, you're actually gonna have a pretty tough time figuring it out in a practical situation. And I when I was doing teaching, and even with myself, I try to remember, okay, well, what's practical, right? We can talk about, you know, current actually flows this way instead of, and
Yeah,
that's great, but let's say, okay, for fixing the car, what really matters, how is this going
exactly.
to actually work for them on a car, so that they can understand it in their heads, right? Like, and I always said for electricity, you need to have a visual concept of it in your head, because for so many things that we fix as technicians, like an engine or brakes or suspension, when I'm going into it, I can picture the components in my head, right? There's the control arm, there's the brake caliper, there's the piston, right? Especially like an engine, right? I can't see the components, but I can visualize them. I know how the crankshaft works and all this stuff. But for so many techs out there with electricity, they don't have that because, you know, realistically, we can't see it. Yes, we can measure it and all that stuff, but we can't see what's happening in the wires. And so many people are lost because they got nothing as far as the visualization up here. But if you can give people, here's how this works, here's the visualization, and that's where, like, people argue against the water in a tube
Yeah,
analogy, but boy, I'd say for most of the stuff that we do on 12-volt systems, that works great as far as a
yeah,
conceptual understanding. That's really, when I'm thinking about electricity, that's how it is in my head. I don't know. I don't know what your
yeah.
feelings are on that.
I mean I that's how I understood it. Like the garden hose, if there's a kink in the garden hose, then there's
Yeah.
resistance, and so that made sense to me. And obviously, as time has gone, then I've seen maybe there's some flaws to it, but as far as the basic understanding of Ohm's law, it works great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And if you can get that basic understanding down, boy, yeah, it applies to so much of what we do. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
you see that, like, you're getting called in for diagnostics, and some of this stuff is, relatively straightforward. And right, it's a blown fuse or a missing fuse or a
yeah,
open wire, or, so little of this stuff is actually some crazy, wacky problem. Some of it is,
yeah,
but most of it's very basic, and just if you know your electrical stuff, you'll get there.
yeah. Yep, that is true. There was one that I saw today in class. I think they were chasing down a parasitic drain, and they've been chasing this for days now. And we saw, like, right when we moved the seat forward, there was like a wet puddle of water, and obviously under once we took the carpet off, it's all like it's all water. And I was just joking. I'm like, where is the marine life here? I mean, no modules in water and all that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, things get crazy sometimes, but yeah, I mean, the basics is what gets us like 90% of the time.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, anytime I found myself going like into a vehicle where I'm suspecting an open circuit and maybe an open wire, I will just like I'll be leaning in the vehicle, and I don't know why I don't look at it when I walk up to the vehicle. I just don't think of it for whatever reason, but I'll turn my head and I'll look up and I'm like sunroof or no
Oh,
sunroof. But if I see the sunroof, I'm like I'm going for that water. I know it's there.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, that's it's almost guaranteed if you got a sunroof on a vehicle and it's older than 5 years. I mean, probably newer if it's European, but it's gonna have moisture and water underneath the
yeah,
carpet. Um, it's it's so common, and well, now they have all these vehicles with these like the roofs are almost all glass. I forget what I was in. It was a Lyft or an Uber that we took from the airport in Florida, and the whole roof was glass besides the like framing of it. And I was like, oh, this thing's leaking like crazy for sure. Give it 5 years out in the wild, and it's gonna be a like you say, yeah, a fishbowl.
yeah,
That's the sort of stuff that you see when you're out there is like you're able to recognize that because you've done it over and over again, like you were saying, the experience part of it is
yeah,
just be like, oh yeah, sunroof, okay, all right, I know where I'm going.
yeah.
So doing the mobile stuff, what was your experience starting out with that? How did that go for you? Kind of starting from scratch, what did you start with? What jobs did you look to get right out the gate?
So obviously, the way even I like that question because that also helped me see the way I advertise too. Because when I initially started, I was just advertising as diagnostics. I'm like, I'm a diagnostic company, and I'm willing to come and diagnose issues for you. And most shops were like, oh yeah, we can do that ourselves. We don't
Mm-hmm.
need we don't
Yep.
need, someone to diagnose. And then I'm like, oh, I need to think out of the box. Okay, I can program. And then some are like, oh, we do have programming equipment. Some do have like a JBox just sitting there, and some
Yep.
do programming. And I did a few that way, and then it was your podcast. It all comes back to your podcast, Sean. It was your podcast, and I was listening, and I heard about Mike Christopherson and Pedro.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily for me, Mike is just 3 hours away from me, and so he was holding a class. And I went to, like, I think I've been to like two or three of his EPROM classes, and that's when I started offering. I'm like, okay, I can do use modules too, and they're like, that's when they started being like, oh, that's different. And
Mm-hmm.
so with that, now I've also been able to enter into keys because, yes, you have the simple keys, but then they obviously some of the more complex ones that require you to access the EPROM. That base is already there. I've already invested in training with that, and so that was kind of, I shouldn't say easy because I'm probably going to get something messed up, but that was, yeah, that was a good base. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think, and that's why I'm like, that the way I approach advertising and marketing has changed, because before I was just saying diagnostics, and then it moved up to programming, and now I'm like cloning and now keys. And so it's just, I'm like, my thing is just to be, um what's the full package, for lack of a better
Mm-hmm.
word or phrase.
Sure.
And so, because the reason I even got into keys was because I was doing the Ford BCMs, and a lot of the times they require two keys, and I'm like, oh, I
Yep.
have to wait for days. I have to wait for them to go to the locksmith and get a key. And I'm like, oh, why don't I cut a key? and
Yeah.
so got
I
into
think
that.
all these key companies, X-Horse and Triton, owe Ford a couple bucks because I hear, that's everybody's story is the Ford was the gateway into doing keys. Is that
Yeah,
me too? Is exactly why I was like, I'm turning down enough of this, or I'm doing the tin foil thing, and I'm like, this is
yeah.
stupid. Let's just sell them a key, right? And up that job, and nobody has two keys for whatever reason, but
No.
that's just the way it is. Um, do you remember what your first job was doing mobile? Like whoever said yes first, do you recall what that was?
Yes, I remembered my first. It was a Ford. Yeah, it was a Ford Taurus, and it was something to do with the flex because it was a flex fuel car.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, obviously Ford, they use, instead of GM, they use the direct way of measuring the flex. Ford uses inferred, and
Mm-hmm.
so he was trying to get me to, like, he's like, we've checked everything. We've checked. I think they did a tiny timing. They replaced a water pump on those. That's, if I remember right, that's the 3.5. In fact, that's the same car I have.
Okay.
And obviously, if you're replacing a water pump, you're doing timing on that. And so
Mm-hmm.
once they did timing on that, it started running lean. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, maybe we have to reset let's see the alcohol content in that. And the alcohol content was a little higher, and we were able to I was able to reset it. And yeah, that
Nice.
was the fix.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I remember my first one. It was actually a programming job because I experienced very similar to what you did, where I had kind of jumped into it as diagnostics and I wanted programming along with it, but I started out very simple. I had a Cardac M and I was going to do GM Ford and work my way towards Chrysler. Um, and I didn't get any response to the diagnostic portion of it either. It's exactly like you said. No, we don't need anybody for that. We take care of that. And the first job I did was a programming job at a shop, and it was a fuel pump control module on a Chevy truck. And I get up there and I'm read up ahead of time and know everything I'm gonna do. And I get this was SPS1 at the time for GM. I get all that set up, and you get to the part where it's gonna like talk to the module to get the current calibration out so that it can show you here's the current, here's the updated calibration going into it, but it just failed. Module fails to respond or something. You get that message in SPS still. If the module doesn't communicate, at that point it airs out, and it aired out. And I'd never seen any of this before. And I'm like, oh crap, I did something wrong. What was I know I missed a step. I thought it was me. And I'm going back over all my stuff. I'm like, do I need to like uninstall and reinstall my drivers and this and that? And it was the fuse for the fuel pump module had popped when the old one was in, and the shop didn't realize that. They didn't replace the fuse. Whether the module's bad or not, I don't know, but they didn't replace the fuse. So once I like calmed down, I'm just like, okay, let's just see, can I talk to the module? And I couldn't. So then I was like, all right, let's go. And the fuse, so I popped the fuse in there, got the programming done, and I remember it being a pretty cool feeling. Right now, I wouldn't think twice about a fuel pump control module, but that was the first one that I did, and it was cool to walk away from the shop and get paid for it. I definitely enjoyed that. But then that programming part of it got me in the door, right? It got my foot in the door because inevitably you run into that situation where the fuse is blown for the module you're trying to program, right? And so now that for me, I'm stopping there and I'm saying, hey, do you want me to figure this out for you? Do you guys want to do it? And as I'm sure you have experienced, so many of these shops are at their wits' end when they start throwing modules and stuff, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. And they just want an answer so that they can keep doing the things that they're doing, struts, ball joints, alignments, brakes, whatever. And if you can provide that answer, like you can actually do it, you can get the right answer for them, it's all over. Then they're going to call you all the time for it. And that's how it works for me. Do some diag work. And I mean, there's an argument to be made that programming is much more profitable, and that's what I should be pursuing over diag, but I still enjoy the diagnostic side of it. I really do.
what like I think it's you've said this like when you were working at Firestone, the grind got monotonous. It was like the
Yeah.
same thing, and then once you started doing what you're doing, you have new problems, new challenges, and it's like what is in store today? What do I have to do today? And it's not what worked yesterday may not necessarily work today, and so it's just that
Hmm.
challenge, that drive that keeps me going, to say, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's never boring. I
No, it's not.
I was saying this to somebody the other day. I'm like, I don't remember the last time I was bored. It just doesn't happen anymore. It's stressful. It is definitely stressful at times. And we were
Yeah.
talking before we hit record of, both of us kind of been getting beat up on stuff recently. I just every single one I walk into, it just seems to be a disaster lately. I get a easy one here or there. What did I have the other day? It was a Ford, or no, I'm sorry, a Lincoln MKZ hybrid that the shop had put in like two or three different racks in this thing, and a couple of them from Ford, and it kept erroring out and throwing these codes. Something was wrong with the rack. There was a U code in there, and this is pretty well known. I didn't discover this by any means, but it's out there if you search some of the websites, and I've seen it before. But if the front tires are either a different size, even a different air pressure, or one of them has like a separated cord, so it's pulling or hopping, or you have a ball joint that's binding, like anything that screws with the front wheels and the turning resistance when you're moving the wheel or going down the road, this thing will shut down. It'll code and it'll stop. The power steering will stop working, and it's kept happening to him. So I just like hopped in the car, I drove it, and it's like pulling to the left and doing one of these as I'm driving on the road. I'm like, okay, we're done. And get some tires on this thing. And so, anyways, you do get easy ones every once in a while, but man, lately it's just been just one after another. That's just a huge pain in the ass. But going back to what you said, that's part of why I do it. Right? It's just it is challenging. It pushes me outside of my comfort zone and to my limits on a regular basis, which I know is good for me, even though I'm frustrated in the moment. But um, that's why I keep doing it for sure.
There are days that I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, yeah,
and and it's like it's lately it's just been anything I touch, it's just, oh man, what did I do? Why did I even look at it wrong? But
yeah,
every now and then, yeah, those easy ones come, and I think they're just there probably to reassure ourselves that that's maybe probably like a confidence check, that you still got it.
yeah, yeah. Right. It makes you feel good, and yeah, if you've been through a specific problem,
Yeah,
hopefully the next time you see that, it's a lot easier. But
yeah,
somebody was saying this recently. I don't recall who I was in the discussion with, but they were saying you have to do the hard work in order to get the easy work, and
yeah,
referring to an automotive shop specifically is like you got to be willing to take on the jobs that suck if you want to get the gravy jobs
yeah,
on a regular basis, right? And it does make sense, and especially for what we're doing, right? We're willing to say yes to our customer when they have got this nightmare, awful vehicle that nobody wants to deal with, and
right,
we're willing to get beat up and just spend all kinds of time trying to figure this thing out, so that when they get that GMTCM, hopefully they're calling you for that programming. You can be in and out. Now
yeah,
I realize it's not always going to be the case, but I've experienced it quite a bit with shops where it's just now I'm getting their business because I took the hit on this thing to really. I figured it out for you. Hey guys, so like this ain't a profitable job for me, but I got it for you. This is the fix.
yeah,
We can you guys your guys' headache is gone. And that has really opened the doors to a lot of the simpler work that comes my way. I think
yeah,
so. I know there's an argument to the other side of that too, but it's worked out pretty well so far for me.
yeah. I agree. I mean, yeah, if you've done, uh, if you've gone over a huddle, then they're like, oh, that means this he's capable of doing this. I guess it's like they trust you. You've
Yeah.
earned their trust. You've earned their respect, and so they're willing to let you do anything.
Yeah, the trust factor is huge, and yeah, you knock out a couple of them for a shop, and they're gonna believe anything you say. So use that power wisely, I would say. But it's good. You know, I remember a few shops when I first started were very suspicious of me. And I mean, hey, from their perspective, with good reason. And I remember one guy, he wanted me to wait until he installed the part that I told him it was before he would pay me. I'm like, nah, this is not how this works, man. Like, if you have an issue, you call me, but here's why, you know, I tested it. Here's why this part is broken. Here's why it's going to fix it. But he's like,
Yeah.
well, you just hang out here. I'll get the part and we'll get it installed and then we'll pay you. I'm like, no, dude, I got a lot of other stuff to do. I'm out of here.
I mean, for some reason, they want to project their insecurities onto you because they're like, oh, there's no one to blame. There's no scapegoat. So like you're the easy target. So like, oh, it's you. You know, you didn't fix it. It didn't work because of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And so
Well, we get that a fair amount with the programming side of it too. You know, we'll get a customer request for an update, and I'm sure you get this too. Like,
yeah,
hey, can we update this module? Sure can. Come in, update the module. You know, do everything correct with factory software, and then they're calling you the next day or whatever. Hey, I don't think you programmed this right. What makes you say that, sir? Well, you know, it's got this weird problem and it does this, and you know, we were pretty sure the programming is what it needed and it didn't fix it. So you should probably come check this back out. Like, come on, man. We had that on a Jeep recently, and it was actually like an essential update. If you've seen those with the blue lightning bolt, which is more important, I guess, of Chrysler for the ECM TCM, and the customer
okay,
requested it, and they're like, "Hey, we got this code." We come in and we show them, "Yep, essential flash, got to do it." Okay, so we do
yeah,
it, charge our money, and we're out. We didn't do any diag, but the guy's calling me back the next week saying, "Hey, his code's back." Like, okay. He's like, "What are you gonna do about it?" I'm like, "Do you want to pay me to figure it out?" Well, no, you guys programmed it. I'm like, "Yeah," and so we had to show him like screenshots of like, here's YTech. This is what the dealer uses. Here's your before. Here's your after. I even pulled up the Chrysler Flash reference sheet and showed him like, this is the newest version. You have this right now in your car. Like, there's nothing else wrong that we could have done. But I think part of it, like you were saying, they want a scapegoat. They want an easy way out of their
yeah.
problems. And now that you're involved, hey, that's you. But
That's true.
there's
Yeah.
also such a disconnect to what's actually happening when we're doing the programming, right? They don't, Sean shows up, he's in the car, he has his laptop out, something happens, and hey, it's magic, right? They don't know, because they haven't done it in a lot of cases, they don't know what's actually happening. So then
Yeah.
there's no sense of, hey, I downloaded the file, this says it's the right file, it goes in, or YTech, you hit a button and it does it all, you know, for you. Like, there's no, I shouldn't say there's no doing it wrong. Yes, there's doing it wrong, but in that instance, like, there's no way we could have screwed that up doing it the way that we did it. But they don't understand exactly what's happening, and so that's part of it. Educate your customer, show them, and that's what I did. I pulled out the screenshots. And one thing I can say to anybody doing this: get before and after screenshots. Get pre-scan, post-scan, screenshots of the calibration, screenshots of the completed. All that stuff has saved my butt so many times.
It's like someone told me he I think I was talking to a yeah, he's a competitor, and he was like telling me that, make sure you're doing your pre-scans and post-scans. And at that time, I mean, I was still new into this. I was like, I didn't understand it, and like with few experiences that I've had, I'm like, oh yeah, this is vital. Like
Yep.
there's no playing around. In fact, sometimes
Yep.
they're like, "What are you doing? Why do you need your scan tool?" I'm like, "Well, I have to make sure that the that there's no pre-existing condition after I'm done with this."
Yep. Yeah, I had a shop that they were adamant that their purge valve circuit code was caused by our programming. But and I wasn't there, so he's calling me as the owner of the business, and that's fine. My technician did it, and Steve tells me, yeah, I was in there, and so I believe him. And I luckily he did the pre-scan, right? So he has that PDF saved with that purge code in it. And I'm sending the guy and he's like arguing with me and I'm like, read the timestamp, okay? And then look at the software that was in there. Okay, here's our post scan. Read the timestamp. Look at the software that's in there. That code was there before. We didn't make that up, and he backed off and everything. But he was. Had I not had that, the personality of the gentleman I was dealing with, it would have been an issue. He was not going to let that go. But that was proof. Like there's no arguing with that. And so yeah, that stuff is absolutely crucial to have. We do it on all our stuff, and luckily technology makes it nice and easy, right? Just boom, all system scan, report, send. You got it. I like the top down stuff. I don't know. What do you use for tool for reports?
So I do the IM608. I have the IM608, and then I also
Okay,
got the what's it called? Um, it's not the Auto Pro Pad, but it's the X2
the
Nitro.
nitro. Yeah,
Yes,
does that
and
do reports?
that does, yeah, that generates
Oh,
reports. That does pre and post scans, and you can actually send it to either your email or the
oh,
customer's email.
no kidding. I have that tool. I had no idea.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I got it for keys, but I mean,
Yep,
now
same
I'm just
here.
like, I might as well use it for other things, and it's been great.
Yeah. It sounds like you're starting up like a DVD when you turn that thing on though. It's got like music and like
Yeah.
as the splash screen comes up. I fired it up the other day. My girlfriend's like, "Were you watching Netflix in there?" I'm like, "No, it's just my tool."
Yep, it is. I mean, for less than $1,000, you can't beat that. Basically,
Oh yeah.
it is
It's
what it is.
it's been the winner for me on Nissan keys a number of times. They'll do like the calculations and stuff on all the different ones, but then programming wise, I've had a few situations where I couldn't do it with other tools, and that was the guy that finished it for me. And so I don't pull it out every
Yeah,
day, which is why I don't know that it did reports, but maybe I should. But for the Nissan stuff, it kicks ass.
yeah, yeah. I recently had a what's it called? A Honda, an '08 Honda SI
Okay.
and Civic SI, and that's been a nightmare. Like that's one of the nightmares I've been having, and luckily yesterday I got it done because usually on Hondas you do if you change the VIN and do the mobilizer, it's done. You know, you're done.
Yeah, I saw you post
But
about that actually.
yeah, I posted just to see if anybody has ran into that, and so I come to find out that the what I'm suspecting is that that ECM was either tuned or they did something with it because
Okay.
I couldn't even it was kind of like you have to unlock it. You can't even read the VIN number. Like,
And so
that
this was
has
a
a
used PCM that
it,
they were putting into it.
it's a used PCM from a company that I think repairs PCM or something. I think they call
Oh,
themselves NPC.
okay.
Yeah, and yeah, it didn't work out. I swapped the EEPROM. There were two EEPROM chips, like a
Uh-huh.
93 series. Swapped both of them, and I had a code for it said that keep alive memory error. And I was
Mm.
reading the description of that code. It's like, oh, this was programmed not, you retrieved and wrote the program uh some other means or something. It's like you're not legal means or something.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. And so I go to the junkyard. I get luckily there was one there. I swapped the chip, did the same thing, and car fired right up. I mean, provided they misdiagnosed the thing, they misdiagnosed the cluster was actually blinking. I'm like, hey, by the way, your cluster is still blinking.
Yeah.
and and I'm like, okay. And the guy wasn't happy. He's like, "Oh yeah, should go up to the front. They're gonna write you a check." And I'm like, "Okay, all right." And I don't know whether they're gonna call me again, but that's what I'm learning lately. That if you call me for a job, you're calling me to program that, and so I'm going to provide the programming service.
Yep.
Diagnostic is another service. I would do that if you want me to,
Yep.
but It
Yep.
looks like they just
100%.
wanted me to solve all their problems. They're just like, oh, just save us. And I'm like, no, that problem is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
luckily for me, I'd saved, I'd done a pre-scan and post-scan. So I'm like, this is not on my end. It could have been on my end if I didn't resolve that the programming error that I was getting, but now it's all good. It's all fixed. And
Yeah. That's the worst when you you have a car that you're programming a module for what the shop wants it programmed, right? They've diagnosed this is the problem, and it turns into be its own problem for whatever reason, like your ECM that's tuned or whatever. You run into something weird. Now you've got to put a lot of effort into getting that part of your job fixed, and along the way, maybe not till you're done, but it happens to me along the way, or I know right away, like this isn't gonna fix their problem, right? Like I'm into my own problem that I've got to work through and sort through, because that's the sort of thing we run into. But we're gonna do all of this. I'm gonna put in all of this effort to make this thing work, and it's not gonna fix their problem. That's the worst. And I'll try to tell a shop like, hey man, this is going to be a pain for XYZ reason. Do you want me to go through with it? Because I don't think this is going to fix the thing you think it's going to fix. I had a BCM on what was it? Encore, some Buick or something the other day, or no, Equinox. I'm sorry, Equinox, and it was a right turn signal, and we like plugged in the BCM, and it wouldn't do its thing either BCM plugged in, the brand new one or the other one. It was like the same thing, completely dead. And I'm just like, guys, I don't think this is gonna fix it. And we messed around with it, and what we ended up finding was like there was he wanted me to program it, but it wouldn't program completely. I wasn't able to complete it. And now this is a problem for me, right? I need to get this program for this guy, get this BCM set up, but I couldn't. It kept blocking me at certain points and airing out and saying no communication, even though I could talk to it. And it showed me the calibration, and it did part of the programming. And so I'm updating my MDI because I started with a VCM3, because I found VCM3 works better on GM most of the time. But so I go to MDI. I hadn't used it in a while. It needed an update. And as I'm updating, I'm like, is this the update that everybody said that bricked their MDI? I'm like, shit. And so it bricked my MDI, and then there's a recovery and sitting there waiting, screwing around. I try the MDI, same thing, blocks me at the same point. And I'm like, what the heck? So I had to back out. I'm like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on, because I think there's something else happening with this car. Well, it turns out there was a fuse for the BCM that was missing, just not there at all. It was gone. And this particular fuse was for the right rear tail light and for the left front headlight, as strange as that sounds. But the other one, the cross ones, worked. And so put that fuse in there, and everything was happy. Now it fixed their original problem, but that was also what was blocking me from completing my programming. So that one kind of got wrapped in together. But yeah, you run into stuff like that where you're just like, this isn't going to fix your problem. Are you sure you want to go through with all this effort?
yeah, and sometimes I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you should tell them that it's not going to fix it and all that." I'm just like, "Well, they didn't call me there to figure out that
Right.
problem. That's not my
Yep.
problem."
Yep.
And as much as I want to and step in and be the hero, it's not
Mm-hmm.
my place, because I've done, believe me, I've done where I've been in the situation where I have told them, and they basically tell me to mind my business, that
Yep.
they're figuring it out. My job is to program. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I know my role, so I'm doing what you what you asked me
Yep.
to do, and so
Yep.
it's
That's
not
it.
my
I mean,
problem.
give the customer what they want. Well, if that's what they ask for, that's what you're gonna get, sir.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, it depends on the shop. I guess my attitude in that moment of what I'm gonna do. But for the most part, I'm in the same boat that you are. As I've
yeah,
transitioned from like, hey guys, I'm pretty sure it's this. Do you want me to blah blah blah? And now I'm just like, programming. All right, we'll make it happen.
yeah, yeah.
And then, hey, you still got a problem. See you later. Oh, wait, can you look at that? Nope, got a full schedule. Yeah,
Yeah.
call my guy. We'll get you on the schedule. Then that's the other thing. Do you get this? This one it tears me. You go to a shop, they've scheduled you for one car, one problem, and then they're like, "Hey, we got another one for you, or we got another two for you." And I want the work, and actually having multiple cars at one stop is a really key to good efficiency doing what we do. But I didn't build that into my schedule.
Yeah.
And so I'm torn on it in the fact that, hey, it's good that they want to give me more work. It's good that they're here and ready and I don't have to drive anywhere, but it screws up the rest of my schedule in the next shop that I'm going to. And then you
Yeah.
set that precedent, and then they're not going to give you the whole picture anytime they call you. And that has happened to me. I don't know. Have you experienced that? Have you dealt with that at all?
Yeah, I think I had a shop call me to do, I want to say it was an Infinity some model, and they replaced the cam actuators and they wanted to reset the cam actuators. And they call me, and then the guy called me again, and he's like, "Hey, by the way, we have a Volkswagen here that needs programming. Could
Mm-hmm.
you do that too?" And then I'm like, "Okay." I mean, I was pretty open, and then he's like, "Oh, we have a radio for a GM, a Yukon," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that would have to be another day. I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry,"
Yep.
because I kind of think it's like you if you tell them this, like, or if you show them that you're capable of this, right, then they want more. They want, oh yeah, you can do this too. Oh yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
that's not a big deal, you can do that too. And
Yeah.
so they don't some people, I should say some people in quotation, but they don't respect boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's the thing about this business, that's where I struggle with where to draw the line. And as I've been working on that, I've had, like, I feel happy, I feel peace, because I don't go into the rut of overworking myself and being depressed because I'm working too much, I'm working around the clock, and it's work. But at the same time, I have a family, I have other responsibilities, and
Yep.
this is
Yep.
not, as much as I like to do this. This is not who I am. This is not me in entirety.
Mm-hmm.
I have other things I do, and so I have to draw the line.
Yep.
And so I think setting boundaries with these shops, like, letting them know expectations, like, this is what you're here to do. Do you need me to do anything else? That helps them, because you're kind of drawing the line there, and they know at the end, if they don't achieve that result, if you program something that was misdiagnosed, it's not your fault, because you've already set that expectation that this is what you're here to do.
Yep. Yeah, the policy and procedure and
Yeah.
setting expectations is huge, and it's one of those things too. Like a lot of it is they don't have respect for your time.
No.
Like if you they set up an appointment with you, and then you show up and the car is not there, it's not ready. You ask them to have it inside, it's not inside. Up in the air, it's not up in the air. The battery's dead, right? They don't know where the module is. Where's the keys? I don't know. And so they don't have respect for your time. But it's one of those things where I've struggled with this too. Is you have to at first start with respecting your own time.
Yeah.
Like Sean has to respect his time and say, hey, I can't waste a bunch of time doing this stuff, because if you don't in the first place, nobody else is going to, right?
Yeah.
They're just going to keep doing it and keep, walking all over you in that respect. And so that was like the first step for me, is like, okay, I need to value my time, and then I can extend that out to in the business and where I'm taking hits as far as productivity goes. But yeah, all that stuff, the policy and procedure, having I got a guy answering my phones now, and that's been fantastic for that, because he's kind of got a script he goes through. I mean, he's put some personality into it, of course, but it's like, hey, we need to, this is our checklist of things. It just got cold here, right? And so now we're like,
Yeah.
cars need to be inside if we were doing diag. That's it, right? And they need to be inside. And so he's calling ahead and say, hey, can you get that car inside? And they do. And that's been really good to have some help there. But yeah, for anybody doing this stuff, answering phones, man, get that policy procedure and use it every time.
There was I think the other day I tried to program a power stroke and it didn't go through. That was having some kind of communication fault.
Okay.
And I was there, I was already there for like an hour and a half, and I had to go to the next appointment, and I'm like, this is not working. I've tried different VCIs. It's not
Hmm.
working. It still says the same thing. You might have to take this to the dealer. And they were like, what? We have to take it to the
Hmm.
dealer? Like, what do you mean by that? I'm just like, I can't do it. That's
Yeah.
in simple, plain and simple terms. I can't do it. I can't be the hero all the time. It's just
Yep.
what it is. And so I had to draw that line. Took my service call fee, and I left. And yes, I didn't make as much as I anticipated I'll make, but I was happy because I drew that line. And I'm like, yeah, you gotta take it to the dealer.
Yep. That's a good piece of advice too, is knowing when to walk away from something or when to say
Yeah,
no to something. And there is a time, right? Like I'm all about taking on the challenge and stuff, but there's a time where you gotta either just say no up front or cut ties with something like you're
yeah,
referring to. And I mentioned on the show a couple times briefly. If I ever get it figured out, I'll probably do a case study on it. But it's a Subaru Crosstrek that I was doing an eyesight calibration on. Could not get this thing to go, and it's a big long story. And I tried just about everything under the sun that I could think of, but then also they got recommended to me by Subaru technicians and people who know way more about ADAS than I do. And I tried all kinds of different stuff, always with the same error. And we had new parts, OE glass, different cameras, measuring angles, all kinds of different settings, as far as what the shop had available to them. I even like printed off an OE target and I had the top non target and we found a scratch on it. So I got a new target. Nothing. Always the same error, contrast error, contrast error, contrast error. And I had hours and hours and hours and hours into this car with all the trips that I had made to try to get it for the shop. And eventually I just said, hey guys, sorry, you're going to have to take this to the dealer. Like, I'm invested in this now. I really want to know what's wrong with it, but something I'm doing ain't working or something with my equipment. Take it to the dealer. So they did. And
yeah.
they had to wait like a month to get it in or something. Like it was weeks before they could even look at it. And they had it for 2 weeks. They had the same error that I did. And they told them, hey, you need a new camera. And so the shop's like, that's cool. But if we put a new camera in there and it doesn't work, we're not paying for it. No, like Subaru's agreed to that. So they put a new camera in, contrast error.
Yeah.
And it's OE glass in there. And so they spent 2 weeks on this thing and they gave up. They said, sorry, we can't fix it. So this the shop, which is also a used car lot body shop, it's kind of a big uh, outfit. Because I told him, would you please just let me know what the dealer says fixed it, right? If they just go through a normal calibration, I'm going to be real questionable in my equipment. But um, he called me. He's like, "You're gonna like this." They couldn't fix it after 2 weeks. I'm like, "Well, that makes me feel a little better." So, I said, so they're keeping it as a loaner vehicle for now. He's like, "Hey, man, you want another crack at this thing sometime? Let me know." And I haven't had the time to get back to it, but I would like to solve it. I would like to know what the heck that 19 Crosstrek. So, and I've reached out to a number of people, and nice gentleman shared a TSB from Subaru where it measured like the angle of the mounting of the camera and the angle of the body of the vehicle, and it's all where it needs to be. So something's up with that vehicle. I don't know what it is though.
Sounds like, I mean, you have to know when to say no
Yeah,
and when to
yeah,
walk
right.
away. Um,
Uh-huh.
and if people can't respect that, then you know what? Like, sayonara.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
There's got to be that mutual respect between you
Yeah.
and your customer for sure.
And one thing I'm finding, some people, I mean, I wouldn't say all, most people, but some people, they look at you, I mean, when I say you, I mean the mobile guy, as they don't want to go to the dealer, so you are the who they come to, because they don't
Hmm.
want to go to the dealer, they don't want to deal with the dealer. And so I got a call the other day, and this guy told me that he got a radio, a used radio from the junkyard, that he wanted to make work in his GM. And I
Mm-hmm.
told him, he's like, oh, they say that it can only work with either using a Tech 2 or some kind of factory tool. It was that old, so you could use your Tech 2 on it. And I happen to have the tool with me. And I
Okay.
told him the price. I was like, yeah, it could work with a Tech 2. There's also a possibility it couldn't work, and we might have to open it up and do some, some EEPROM work. And this is the price for that. This is, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. And he's like, you know that you're charging as much as the dealer, right? I'm like, I'm charging, yeah, I'm more expensive than the dealer. It's like, why? I'm like, because I'm affording you convenience. I'm
Yep.
coming to you.
Yep.
The dealer would charge you that amount regardless of whether they do squat or not. They
Mm-hmm.
don't. They're just going to charge, it's time. You're paying for that.
Yep.
And he didn't like that, and so he ended the call. And so I'm like, so you don't see the value in what I'm doing, and you think that I should stoop below, and that was, I struggled with that because it hurt. Maybe I'll say it. It hurt my pride.
Mm.
It hurt me, and I mean, he didn't respect me. He didn't respect my time. He didn't see value in what I was doing, and so he's like, you
Yeah.
shouldn't be charging more than the dealer. Who are you to charge more than the dealer? Or who, no, not even more than the dealer. Who are you to charge the same price as the dealer? So, I mean,
Well,
I'm just like,
yeah.
okay, go to the
I mean, the
dealer.
number one thing, the dealer doesn't come to you. So
Yeah,
there you go. Why I should charge at least the same, if not
yeah,
more. But then try calling some of the dealers. If it's anything like where I'm at, you call for some of these jobs and they're a minimum of a week out. That's like the best case scenario. We have a local Ford dealer that they can't do like programming until sometime in December. Like it's and that Subaru, it was like a month before they could get it in, and like we can get to you within 24 hours most
yeah,
cases.
yeah,
There's exceptions, but we can get to you in like a day. And so why would we not be charging more? Like you said, the convenience factor, that's where it's
yeah,
at. So that's yeah. And some of that is like salesmanship, right? Selling yourself, selling your product,
yeah.
selling your business, and that sort of stuff. And that's not my forte. I'll tell you that. That is not my chosen profession. I never wanted to be a salesman of anything. But as a business owner, you kind of pick the stuff up as you go. And
Yeah,
like I say, I got a guy to help me with that kind of now too, who does most of the phone calls. So
yeah.
he's much more of a salesman than I am. He's got a sales background, and I'm cool with that. I'll fix the cars. Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you spending some time with me, and we message back and forth a lot, and so it's been really nice to get to know you too. Hopefully, I meet you in person someday here.
Yeah,
You going to Vision or anything?
I think I'm planning to go to at least one event next year, 2024.
Okay,
That'll probably be my New Year's resolution
awesome.
to
Yeah,
do to fly down there or drive down there, however it is. But I definitely want to make it a point to at least go to one of these events. I'm tired of living it vicariously through you guys.
yeah.
I'm going to
That
break it.
That's the worst when everybody's at an event and they're all posting about it and everything. You're like, oh man, I was just looking at the Apex SEMA stuff. I've never been to it, but there's a bunch of people I know. I'm like, oh, that would be a blast. But you
Yeah,
can't make it to every one of them. At least I can't. I don't have the time or the money to do something like that. But
yeah.
try to hit the big ones, and I'll definitely be at Vision this spring in Kansas City. So, but yeah, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you having me, Sean. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for Maxwell for joining me today. And also a big thank you to everyone out there listening and all the feedback I get about the show. I really appreciate it. So keep it up. But with that out of the way, let's get out there and start fixing the world one car at a time.